Hi everybody, I'm Robert LaRocca, you know me. Here we are together again, sharing an unnatural interest in the psychology of entertainment media. Can we be saved? Welcome to part 4, and congratulations on having the intestinal fortitude to bear a progressively more intimidating movie, all for the sake of finding out how filmmakers influence our decisions and thought processes. If you are like me, you have decided to forego a little comfort in order to investigate more media theory, because things are going to get sick in this one. We pick up where we left off. Panchali is returning from wherever Thorn was trying to buy up land. In the script they call him Panchali, in the movie he's Passerian. Perhaps Panchali was too ethnic. Passerian phones Rich Thorn. A servant answers and Mr. Thorn is unavailable. We see the profane and debaucherous Anne and her clueless devil's cuck Rich Dick ride in a sleigh like idiots as the world teeters on the precipice of annihilation. We cut to Paul's stylish high-rise apartment that prominently features a chessboard. Paul likes to play games. There's not a lot to read into this story though, it's straight up the middle. Paul answers the phone, it's Passerian. Paul tells him to come right over. Rich Dick the Cuck reading the message from his servant and wondering why Passerian is calling him at home. We cut to Passerian, who is describing to Paul the murder of a key decision maker that stood in the way of Thorn acquiring their land. Then Passerian explains that there were actually 3 killings. Paul stalls Passerian by saying Rich wants to see him about the P-84. Of course, Passerian says he will take care of it. Paul gives Passerian the death stare. A van from the Davidson Military Academy arrives with some of the boys Damien invited to tour the Thorn chemical plant. Damien leads them forward to danger. All the boys seem to be having a good time with Damien leading the way as if it's already his factory. Passerian is still trying to reach Rich Dick the Cuck Thorn. Now that Damien has received his revelation, he has acquired an overview of the chessboard. He has knowledge of all earthly things, and he knows that Passerian is trying to stop his plans. The boys are advised to wear hard hats and glasses which will offer no protection from corrosive and poisonous chemicals. And we find out that Thorn Industries produces fertilizers and pesticides. We cut over to Paul extolling the virtues of famine and how it will play a major role in the company's growth for the future. Natural resources and famine. This little piece of information is disturbing for those unfortunate enough to be stuck in the room with this apostate of Satan. Now we can see the connection between the references to the Native American Indians as the Luciferic Paul describes how they must hide their true motives from the indigenous people of the lands they plan to control. Jane, Paul's striking assistant, advises that Passerian is beginning his diagnostics on the P-84 malfunction. The demonic Paul walks past this beauty without giving her a second glance, proving that he isn't human. The tour guide explains the paradoxical trade of the production of toxic chemicals in order to provide nourishment. Passerian gets down to work. They begin by checking a vat. These vats hold quantities of around 10,000 gallons of toxic corrosive chemicals, so they represent a great danger if not properly managed or even when they are managed properly. Meanwhile, the boys are still on tour, which is conveniently overlapping the diagnostic areas. This wouldn't happen in real life. Even workers with approved access would be restricted. The tour guide explains that the toxic chemicals are precisely controlled by automated machinery. When the technician comes to the 14S valve, he discovers a problem. His last words are, "uh-oh," before he is blasted with a deadly chemical with such force that it breaks the metal scaffolding. Passerian screams to shut down the P-84. The control center is unable to shut down the machine. Passerian rushes to his helper, but the man is dead. Passerian tries to escape but doesn't make it. That solves Paul's problem about Rich finding out about the murders he orchestrated. Damien looks coldly at his diabolical purpose manifesting. Paul locks eyes with Damien, who is not at all fazed by the terrible, toxic breach. Rich demands the finest care for the boys who were almost killed in his toxic chemical plant. The doctor taking care of the boys explains that they will suffer no permanent damage. All except for Damien, who was unaffected. Dr. Kane wants to keep Damien overnight for some tests. Of course, Damien shoots up from his relaxed posture in protest. He doesn't want anyone looking too closely at him and his situation. And the lascivious deviant plies her charms on the doctor, trying to aid Damien. The doctor unwisely relents. Damien kicks back, secure in the knowledge that everything is going according to plan. The doctor does some research that night, and wow, what a stretch. With a few random flips through a reference book, he is able to match Damien's blood type with that of a jackal. Dr. Kane phones for backup from Dr. Bill. I always enjoy that joke. You'll also see that one in Eyes Wide Shut. The doctor carefully stows the blood sample and walks to the elevator. He needs to go from floor 23 to floor 16. The elevator becomes possessed by Satan and goes up instead of down, which is disconcerting. The elevator slowly rises to the top floor, building tension as Latin whispering occurs in the background. The doctor ineffectually punches the button for the floor he actually wants, as you will. Suddenly, the elevator begins to plummet downward. The doctor jams his thumb into the emergency stop button, but it's no use. This scene is kind of like the Willy Wonka glass elevator. The doctor hits the floor hard, but reasonably unscathed. What a relief. But wait, not so fast. A support cable has broken free and is whizzing toward the doctor at great speed. The cable breaks through the elevator, cutting it and the doctor in half. We can see the effect of extreme violence in movies. Audiences get a feeling that experiencing the terrifying content is worth it if the results are positive. So you feel like, oh no, now we really have to foil Satan, as this character's guts are hanging out. This is by far the most grisly death so far, and remember, that's saying quite a bit. And we see in the morning paper that Dr. J. Kane perished in a freak accident. And the debased and lecherous sleazebag says that we were just talking to him yesterday when he wanted to do tests on Damien, subtly implying that this is the fate that awaits any who stand in the way of the forces of evil. Anne asks what kind of tests the doctor wanted to perform, and Rich does not provide an answer. Finally, Rich is starting to ask a few questions like, why is Damien happy-go-lucky while everyone around him suffers and dies a horrible death? And the pervert attempts again to pry information from Rich about Dr. Kane's suspicions. Unholy Anne plays dumb, still trying to extract information from Rich. Look at her horse face. Now we cut to dim-witted Charles running toward the Thorn Museum entrance. He has received a package from the dig in Israel. Inside the box is a leather chest. Charles opens the chest and finds documentation of a couple new-looking scrolls, some newspapers, a notebook, and a letter from Carl Bugenhagen. And, of course, the daggers, which have the power to kill the Antichrist. Charles locks up the daggers, stashes the cross for protection, and puts the letter back in the envelope. Charles asks if Rich knew that Bugenhagen gave Rich's brother the daggers to kill Damien. Charles hands Rich the letter from Bugenhagen, and suddenly a tidal wave of exposition from Charles. Damien is the beast from the Book of Revelation. Charles also somehow knows Damien was born of a jackal. That's an unusual piece of knowledge to acquire. Here we see that Charles is finally fully awake. As long as he was under the spell and not presenting any problem, he was safe. Now he's trying to wake up Richard. Richard fights him all the way. Charles tells Richard that Ygal's wall will arrive in New York tomorrow, which is not good news for Damien because his likeness is all over that wall. Mark heard the whole mess. His head starts to review everything that has happened so far. A shot of the mansion from the outside. At almost 12:51 a.m., we see Mark reading the Book of Revelation, and there's an empty Kleenex box on the nightstand, which I must admit is a funny joke. And the days of carefree trumpet playing are over, which is a shame because although Mark is a spoiled brat, he would eventually no doubt mature into something much better. Most teenagers go through that stage. Richard reads the letter from Bugenhagen. Later, Richard is discussing this with Anne, the filthy devil's Sumka. She once again tries to buffalo Richard into giving the issue a miss. They go outside to find the boys, to gather them and go out to dinner. Damien is looking for Mark. He says, I know you're there. And he does know. He has a supernatural knowledge of all events now that he is fully into the spiritual world of his hero's journey. The British have a habit of dropping their R's and then reinserting them where they don't belong later. Why are you running away from me, Mark? Mark says, I know who you are. Mark says that he heard Charles talking to his father. I have to admit that I enjoy the performance of Jonathan Scott Taylor during this scene. He could have said the line straight, but he professes an affected astonishment as he asks Mark what Charles said. Mark tells Damien that Charles said the devil could manifest his image on earth. And Damien, in mock surprise, says, "The devil? What else did he say?" Mark tells Damien he's the beast and he has witnessed his dark power. Damien says he loves Mock like a brother. Mock says that the beast has no brothers. That's about to be conclusively proven. Mock accuses Damien of having been born of a jackal. Don't forget, you can hear more about the jackal narrative if you join my Patreon and help me keep the lights on, literally. But anyway, Damien begs Mock to join him and Mock won't do it, so Damien kills Mock with a brain aneurysm. This scene scared me to death when I saw it as a kid. I was sure that I would eventually have an aneurysm myself, and it looks quite painful. Finally, Damien screams, and I think this is genuine. He has no choice but to kill those who refuse to join him because they will prove inconvenient later. And that's the end of part 4. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you for the final part, number 5.